What kind of challenges does an accompanying spouse face? The biggest challenge that an accompanying spouse faces when he or she moves abroad is that of identity. Suddenly, you have none. You are Mrs. Husband's job or Mr. Wife's job. As I said before, mostly I'm talking about Mrs. Husband's job. Suddenly, your identity, I would say, just kind of vanished in the time zones. You get somewhere and your job that you had that identified you, that gave you a paycheck, that gave you all these multifaceted, pieces that made up so much of you, gone. Suddenly you are so-and-so's mom, so-and-so's husband, the wife of so-and-so at the embassy, the wife of so-and-so at the corporation. Your identity is basically gone, and you need to figure out ways to bring it back. I used to call myself Ms. Speck of Dust. That was my line. I used to go to cocktail parties, which frankly, I hate. I hate cocktail parties because people kind of flit around and look for somebody better to talk to. My husband, at the end of the day, hated to bring me to cocktail parties because I usually would say something pretty nasty and undiplomatic to people. But I had no identity. So when somebody would say, "And what do you do?" which is the question that every wife goes out of her mind when she's asked, "What do you do? What did I used to do? What would I like to do? What am I planning to do? What would I like to do to you for asking me this?" What do you do flummoxes you. Flummoxes you as a spouse because suddenly you don't know what you do. You know what your husband does, but you've never possibly lived in a life where you're identified only by what your husband's work is. So it's one of the most important things that a woman needs to do, or a man. A woman needs to recover her sense of self, because that's what vanishes absolutely when you first move somewhere. But the good news is, and this is what I can't stress enough, is that you end up building for yourself an entirely brand new identity. And I've seen so many women do just that. Women who, I had a friend in Beijing who never drove a car before, a Canadian, never drove a car, learned to drive in Beijing. I was so impressed with her, I couldn't believe it. She had to drive a car because she was busy renovating part of the embassy. She had to get to her work. Women become writers, women become artists, women become all sorts of fabulous things that possibly they never thought about doing before. So, even though there's time when you think, I don't know who I am anymore, I don't know what to do with myself, I can't stand myself, you will recover your identity. It's really, really important to do that, but it will take time, and it will take a lot of self-awareness in trying to figure out who you are and what makes you who you are.